Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, and this is part 2 of our video covering the Mwagni Expanse. If you have not seen part 1 yet, you may want to go watch the first one first. If you are just interested in the Mwagni Jungle area and the Lair Mountains, then stick around, this is your video. Picking up from last time, upon the Mwagni River, close to the beginnings of the Mwagni Jungle, sits Natambu. The city and its central school, the Mwagni, trace itself back to the times of old man Jatambe, the man who brought magic back to the world at the end of the Age of Darkness. The city is a democratic haven, the ruling council of 11 elected by the people, though 5 are appointed from the largest trade guilds, of course. The town is known for its beautiful wind chimes, its pastime of boat racing, and of course, the Mwagni, the oldest school of magic in the Inner Sea region. Which, by the way, probably deserves its own video some other time, so we would just slice that part out like we did Vidrian and the Southern Lands. For now, the town. Walking through Natambu, let's start outside. We have the battlefield, location of an ancient invasion which now is definitely haunted, and the Firepot Forge, which prefers its location in a cave just outside of town where the explosions won't bother anyone. There's also just at the very edge of town, the Last Chance Shop, where those leaving the town by river have one last chance to sell whatever did not sell at market. Coming into the main town, you'll be able to see the Black Crowned Crane, a restaurant bought by a successful adventurer. No one knows where she hid all the treasure she collected, but all clues point to somewhere in the restaurant. Not far from there is the Dancing Courts, a place where impromptu dance performances are held by those who wish to stand out. Going clockwise now, the Carnivorous Gardens is a collection of various deadly and man-eating plants. A must-visit if I say so myself. Just as much so is the wonderful masks made at Goanna's carvings, and the various creatures kept at Oba's Wondrous Creature. The Civic League Boathouse is said to be haunted, but by a friendly ghost. And the Spotted Hyena is the stop you want if you want to rent any rideable animal. And now it is time for the big one. The vast, lush jungle by which the region is named, the Mwagni Jungle. Sometimes also known as the Ocota Drainage Basin, due to the river in its center. A place filled with large trees, diverse wildlife, and unforgiving rains for those who enter unprepared. Let's go over general landmarks. Starting from the south, we have the area of Bloodletting Songs, a location of what is known as a clipped-off runestone. What this means is that birds, and people, born too close to the plateau are warped into unrecognizable monsters. Somewhere else in the region is the city of Holy Zatromba, the capital of a large empire which worshipped Pharasma. The empire was devoured by the city of Rastil centuries ago, and now it is just another lost city in the jungle. Other examples of this are the serpent folk capital of Savanthi, the demonic city of Ird, and the lost pyramid of the firefly goddess Kitumu. Along the southern bank of the Mwagni River is the forest of Egyaben, where old man Jatambe defeated and imprisoned one of the children of Rovagug. To this day, the trees break apart in mysterious ways, and, it is said, a strange disease causes people to do the same. Close to the center jungle, we have Renge's Circle, home to an evil trapped within Druidic powers. There is also Gaza's Pool, a body of water which can control all rivers in the Mwagni Jungle. It is also around here where you will find the River Meh, a river that causes wildlife too close to it to become sickly and weak. Close to the Telwa uplands, we have Spiro, an unknown fortress, either Cyclopean or early Dwarvish in design. There is Sorok, I believe Sorok, a land of worshippers of the Imperial Lord Windless, protected by his herald. To the north is the legendary doorway to the Red Star, a gate connected to the planet Occuton, and also the Colossus of Sembargi, a strange giant stone warrior. Its purpose is unknown. But there is one danger deep in the jungle. Welcome everyone to our first side tangent, the part of the show where we all work together in perfect harmony. Today's topic is ants. Ants are insects who are famed as being one of the most prominent creatures who are eusocial. This means that every creature is born with a purpose. All decide at birth what they will do with the rest of their lives, and they operate as such. There is no actual such thing as a hive mind, as some writers have taken the apparent control and sociality of the ants in the work they perform and created such an idea. Each one is an individual creature, but they all function as one to work for the betterment of their nest. Ants have many uses, from pest control to food. Actually decent food if you have actually had a chance to try them. But some consider them a pest themselves, which, considering how fast they will swarm on food to claim it as their own, I can see why. But why we are mentioning ants is that, like many eusocial insects, they can be more dangerous than they appear. Some species of ants in Africa, if they find a living creature caught in their passing tides, will quickly strip it to the bone. No surprise, one of the greatest enemies of the Mwagni's past is the Lord Biting Ants, and the mysterious Hungry School is made up of ants teaching mortals dark secrets. So now that we have explored the jungle at large, let us get down deep into the center of it with Lake Ocota. Or first, let us look at the city built upon its edge, Usaro. Usaro is a city founded by the worshippers of the demon lord Angaza. Angazan demands both obedience and savagery, and therefore created creatures which have little choice but to serve him. The Charka are monkey-like worshippers, warped through sacrifices to Angazan, and still retain some of the appearance of the creatures they once were, but none of the free will. And the strongest is the chosen of Angazan, the Gorilla King, a position granted when a bloodthirsty follower manages to defeat and kill the former Gorilla King in combat in front of the altar of Angazan. Though recently the chain has been broken, the Gorilla King was slain without an heir, and the altar was taken by the Matangi elves, throwing the anarchic city into a new form of chaos. That said, we cannot go through this properly without spending a side tangent talking about Angazan himself. Angazan is a demonic lord of apes, brutal tyrants, and jungles. He appears as a giant blood-red ape with 6 fingers, a slashing tail, and horns. As a tyrant he demands utter obedience, and therefore created Chakra without free will, and has his champion, the Gorilla King, utterly loyal to him. In combat, he prefers to bite and claw and gore instead of use weak weapons. And those he slays are met with a horrible fate. He often forces them to wear the mantle of the Gorilla King, turning enemies into the most loyal of subjects, and condemning their souls to his grasp after they die again. His domain is Arvolth Kor, a large cavern in the abyss with jungles on both sides, allowing in some places for one to cross from one side to another. Not, of course, that it makes a difference, with both sides being populated by his loyal and brutal subjects. The city of Usuru is connected to Lake Ocota by the River of Blood, a river so filled with decaying flesh and gory filth that it runs red. It is also the only way to get water for many in the city, so being able to stomach the foul water is a rite of passage for the human residents. The river passes through the farm where humans live. Whether their ancestors were kidnapped or came willingly, these humans now live in constant fear of the Chorka, and survival is the first thing the young learn. To north of town is the High Throne, home of the Gorilla King and the altar of Anganzon. It is surrounded by the Chasm of Screams, which occasionally lets out a flesh-eating mist. Below the throne is the vaults, containing all the treasures and artifacts collected by the Gorilla Kings over the millennia. But, speaking of Lake Ocota, this is the lake at the very center of the Mwagni Expanse, where all the rainwater eventually flows. It is the main water source while also being the home to many dangerous creatures, many a creature being the end of those who do not fear nature. Not that it has stopped adventurers from trying to explore the region, especially now in times of out of a Gorilla King. And therefore many meet their end, not from some giant monster, but by piranha, crocodiles, and nettle fruit. And that is not taking into account the dangers of the lake itself. Places like the Old Man's Well will suck down the unexpecting, before they even feel the current change. Though not all landmarks are dangerous, the Spire of Destiny at least showing it is not currently doing anything to harm travelers. There are thousands of legends to what it could be, and what creatures live around it. And various creatures do live around the lake outside of Osaru, this being the location of Nemshezu, the largest Iruxi city. Of course, with a lake this large, there are legends about what hides in its depths. This is a perfect topic for our third side tangent, lake monsters. I briefly cover lake monsters in Loremaster's library about cryptids, but let's go a little more in depth. For centuries, man has looked at the sea and been wary. But as the world was explored more, ironically, their fears became smaller. And by that I mean they started looking for monsters in the depths of lakes as opposed to the open ocean. Historiographers point to the legend of the Selkie to have been the first lake monsters. But it is in the post-dinosaur discovery theory of living fossils which gave most lake monsters their form. I went through real-life examples in the cryptid video, so let's look at an in-universe example of the feathered god. Said to inhabit Lake Ocota, legends describe it as an out-of-place water worm with the head of a crocodile, or as a giant albino snake of great knowledge. Regardless of the truth, something definitely lurks around the sphere of destiny, and unlike our real-life examples, it most definitely is not an otter. Lake Ocota is also home to the Kalaji elves, one of the 3 elf sub-ethnicities in the area. They live on small islands dotting the lake, though mostly crowd just north of Osaru as to better attack them. Most of the settlements are temporary in nature, designed to be jumping off points to attack the demonic city, made to be abandoned in case of counteroffensive. There, however, are 2 exceptions, Haven and Berenibi. Haven is their home, sometimes called Last Stand, as it is the last line of defense they will have to hold, and where they first gained their enlightenment. As believers that they are their own worst enemy, this place is built for the purpose of meditation and constant spiritual improvement. Berenibi, in turn, is all the way back in Bondu Hills, reaching there being part of the physical training the place has to offer. Now exploring the other settlements in the jungle. Next we have Kimwe. Kimwe is far to the east, close to the Nadeli Gap in the Shattered Range, and therefore is a major trade post between the Impossible Lands and the Mwagni. From Nex to Droon to Natambu, people from all corners look for goods from all corners. A town dedicated to trade, though this has also allowed large corporations like the Apsis Consortium and the East Mwagni Mining Company to take parts of the city and drain wealth and life from many of the city's people. Though the recent ban on slavery has partially made this better. Though the most famed portion of the city, more than any one building or corporation, are its walls, with resistance to damage allowing them to stand against any invasion. In addition, the streets are dotted with statues, the stone watches of unknown purpose, but are said to come alive when the city is in need of their help. This city has actual districts I can use, but before going through them, we start outside the western gate with the Tiger House, a place where all workers are able to have safe space to air their grievances. Stepping inside the gate takes us to the poorest neighborhood of Straggleblock, where thieves and beggar princes call home. Not far away is the miners' camp, where those owned by the East Mwagni Mining Company are forced to live off company credit. It is also here one finds the company's gold refinery. South of both districts is the Walker Shrines, where all the churches and related buildings can be found. Also, it's home to North Station, homes built in the Avestan style for distant travelers. West of that is the Baker Block, home of the old slave trade, and now open to refugees. Bloodman Hall still stands, but now is used to lock up criminals instead of slaves. Well, maybe. Before going any farther west, outside the walls here is the honorary district of Wallshadow, a collection of gnomes who, due to a forgotten pact, refuse to live inside the city walls. But back inside, next on the list is Whitemark, a district consisting almost entirely of Ekuj elves. South of that is the Brass Block, a location owned and rebuilt by the Apsis Consortium. Now traveling north, we reach the West Gate, and Baramandu. I believe it's pronounced Baramandu, but a neighborhood which was the strongest against slavery, and has the principles of all helping one another. One can also find the road's gentle end here, an upscale hotel for travelers. Irisa Block is the northwestern corner of the city, and where permanent markers and cramped housing can be found. It is here one will also find Water Block, where stone giants guard one of the city's three wells. The other two can be found in the Walker Shrines, where it is tended by a priest of Gazra, and in the northern Mozimba district, which is lands devoted to the Zenji farmers and herders to give them a place to come home to. And in the center of town is the central market, where traders can set up their stalls in the mostly empty space, the Andayeki Pavilion being an exception, being a public space for prayer that one is able to reach without leaving the marketplace. And finally, we have Undermoth, the underground part of the city where kobolds live and do their part to protect their city. During all that, we mentioned the Ikuji, so let's do them next. Especially since their scattered nature means this is going to be the best chance to pin them down. There's no one central location of the Ikuji. Them building their cities over places of power so that if someone tries to take the power, or the power starts to cause trouble itself, they will be there to stop it. Mostly these locations are threadbare military sites where elves first came to the Mwagni and where they scored the legendary victory against an aspect of the Hawk. However, just like the Mwagni earlier, there are exceptions to the established rule. They need a sturdier place to train and to live. Training is done at the circles, where young elves learn how to fight. And Ijo is a place where children are raised and protected away from the front lines of the Ekuji's endless battle. And while we're in the area, let's finish the elves with a trip to Nagisa, which is north of Kimwe. This town is made up of temples devoted to demon lords after demon lords, ensuring that they will always have one shrine to their worship on the material plane. Therefore, it made a perfect location for the Olij to take up residence so that they can study demons while slowly destroying altar after altar to demon lords. Bai Sela is what one will find as the first location seen, set up just outside the gates of the city to serve as a library and training grounds for all things anti-demon, while also being too dangerous to leave in the city. Inside the actual city, there are 7 circular areas for physical training referred to as the Proving. Several temples near the entrance have been cleared, and now contain the Archive, the single greatest library to demon lords and how to defeat demons. This also includes the Queen's Vault, the collection of all artifacts taken from these temples. For guests, the edge of the elven-controlled land ends at the Lodge, a place with comfortable housing and healing, and of course some good food. For those uninvited, there are always trade posts to devote to entering another city gate and raiding the temples. The latest being the Chelish-owned Collaborative Interest Trading Co. And, flush against the Shadowed Range, where we currently are, we are by the original homelands of the now migratory Tawalu dwarfs. However, their new homeland is Tannen Shadow, the location where they buried the cloud dragon Tannen and started the path of negotiators and nomads. It is built around the mausoleum bearing the dragon's bones, which are now encased in adamantine to prevent theft. The other 2 buildings at this location are the Hermitage, where those who have traveled here may rest and reflect, and the Chamber of the 16, where all interclan arguments can be settled. Because of its secretive nature, however, Taralu are more commonly found either on the road or in other scattered settlements. An example we are given is Zephyri, mostly because it has a Pathfinder Lodge attached, of course. And to finish off our last of the Ancestry cities, we have Ninewall. This fortification is home to the Matangi Urks, and sits halfway between Lake Ocota and the Sodden Lands. This fortress is designed to fight off any demon invasion and keep those inside safe. The outer wall is Ukuja, and is a city-sized fortress which has everything one would need to fight demons. Kutanju, the second wall, serves as both a prison and training grounds. Somewhere around the 6th wall, one will find Ritonli, a town completely populated by half-orcs, set up because they wish to get strong themselves, without their parents being overprotective. They fulfilled this through the Rainkin Academy, one of the finest combat schools in the Nine Walls. Yamanji is just outside the Ninth Wall, populated by Yamasan refugees who turned their agricultural prowess to keeping the territory fed, in exchange for safety, of course. And within the Ninth Wall is Mata Kali, home to oak nobles who are just as soft and uninspiring as nobles everywhere else. Guess some things never change. Which brings us to the northern edge of the Mwagni Jungle and the city of Jaha. Jaha was a city the Lagani and Iruxi fell back to when the Eye of Arbendago destroyed the native lands. After not too long a time, the Lagani enslaved the Iruxi and treated them as second class, as you can expect from the Sock Brotherhood of Old Kud. Then one day, they vanished. Then Lagani, Iruxi, and all of them vanished. Another group of Lagani and another group of Iruxi came to the city, found it abandoned, and learned from records what once took place here. The two groups decided to not fall into the same mistakes as their predecessors, having both people join together, and as two groups who hold the stars in high esteem, they forge a different path towards the future. The city is designed as a rectangle with 4 fortresses in the corners, 3 of which have been reclaimed by the second population. The 4th lies dormant. The center of town is a large dome structure called the Karamasi, with the constellations projected inside the dome, because one of such needs to be in every Lagani city. Just outside the planetarium is the Jebayiti, the Dusk Market, where the greatest concentration of shops are set. And below is what is known as the circulation. Miles of underground tunnels connecting all the important buildings of the city, with strange empty catacombs below. And that is not even getting into the waystones, mysterious stones which stand as portals to other locations, many with their own mysteries which may never be solved. We are coming down to the end, but we still have the most north in order to finish. The mountains which separate the Mwagni from the Golden Road is the barrier wall. Mountains which are virtually impassable outside of a few passes. There are a few points of interest along these slopes. The first is Holden, the town separating Rahadam from the Sutherlands, and has an organization, the Rain Wall, to keep that separation intact. The Tower of the Stone Wardens is the local headquarters to Druids who protect this region. The Tomb of the Thousand Tusks is a home to an Ardhaikaith Asura, known as Kaisad Vasad, which is where he keeps the disembodied head of the ephemeral lord Shay Fivedon. And finally is the legendary Earth Sphere, a lost library containing lost knowledge collected by Old Man Jatambe. Even to the last, the old man still makes an appearance. We're almost done, but before we go a step farther, the next area needs some context before we proceed. So let us have our final side tangent be about the Shori Empire. The Shori were originally a mingling of those from the Mwagni and those who had traveled from southern Gurund. The original empire was formed by Black Heron, one of the 10 magical warriors, with the goal of eliminating cults of Rovagug. However, the cults managed to hunt them down in their tree fortresses, so they went higher. Through the miracle of the aromatic infallibilum, They managed to make their cities fly. Not sure how you're supposed to pronounce that on the first try. Of course, like many other empires at the time, they became prideful and started making their empire one for humans, where other creatures were treated as slaves. But one by one, whether through disease or disaster or giant monster attack, hello Trask, the cities fell one by one. Now the empire of the sky and the crowned technology has been lost, but the empire's ruins remain. Which brings us to our final stop, the ruins of Ko. This is the ruins of one of the shortest sky cities, crashed into the corner of the barrier mountains, creating a pass which goes directly to Assyrian. The location can be broken down into two separate ones. The first, the city itself. Its towers crashed to the ground, its paving still hanging above in some places. The city is full of amazing magical artifacts, the likes of which are unable to be recreated with modern day technology or magic. However, there are still plenty of dangers, including a lake flowing from an endless elemental water supply and eroding guardian constructs marching around. Oh, and let's not forget the petrifying powers of the location now known as the Fields of Glass. Nearby, in various villages, live the Omoto people, the last remaining ancestors of the people who lived in the city. They make their living scavenging the wreckage, selling for a price or keeping if they find an everyday use for the items. That said, while they have lost much of their ancestors' techniques, they are knowledgeable in all forms of magical items, and they know how to get value out of everything they find. And that is the Expanse in all its glory. And another two-parter finished. Thank you everyone who stuck around for this full hour of me giving you lore. As always, I hope it helped. Regardless, next week we are going to be starting another month-long event. I hope you are all looking forward to look at forms of classical monsters take on Galarian. But until then, keep on exploring. While we found many great places this week, there is still much more to find deeper still.